Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're actually going to crack open the dusty archives of a 15th century court historian. And through their, well, let's be honest, incredibly biased chronicles, we're going to see exactly how a completely shattered empire was rebuilt using the sheer power of pure propaganda. We're exploring the absolutely fascinating reign of the Ottoman Sultan Murad II. You know, we so often think of medieval empires as being forged strictly through steel and bloodshed, right? But what we're looking at today is a literal masterclass in public relations. Because Murad II, he didn't just conquer lands, he conquered minds.
Think about this quote for a second. "Those of us who kill will be Ghazis. Those of us who die will be martyrs." Now that sounds like the ultimate spontaneous battlefield cry, right? Like a desperate rallying shout to steel the nerves of his soldiers against a massive Christian coalition at the Battle of Varna in 1444. But here is the absolutely fascinating part. That line, it was actually lifted directly from a fictional storybook. It was a completely scripted line, meticulously chosen for that exact cinematic moment.
So, that begs the question, how on earth did a sultan use fictional, made-up legends to build a very real, very powerful empire? Well, to really get this, we have to look at the massive pile of political baggage he inherited. Back in 1402, his grandfather, Bayezid I, suffered this humiliating, catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Ankara at the hands of Timur. The Ottoman territories totally fragmented. They were reverting to autonomy left and right. So when Murad finally took the throne in 1421, he was desperate. He absolutely needed the support of the public and the nobles to legitimize his rule and glue this shattered empire back together.
Which brings us to Section 1, Crafting the Ghazi Persona.
To secure that crucial support, Murad decided to basically reverse engineer an ancient Islamic trope to create the ultimate public image. He knew he couldn't just demand loyalty. He had to inspire it. He had to become a living legend. So he adopted the persona of the Ghazi. Now, Gaza wasn't just about swinging a sword. It was the noble championing of Islam and justice. Yes, it meant fighting non-Muslims, but it also meant fighting cruel Muslim rulers. It meant embodying total simplicity, piety, and a really noble sense of justice. It was a brilliant, brilliant PR move for a ruler who desperately needed legitimacy, because a true Ghazi was seen by the people as a simple soldier and a protector, not some greedy tyrant. Okay, so how do you actually become a living legend? Well, you study the old ones. Murad literally commissioned the translation of ancient Persian, Arab, and Anatolian epics into Turkish. He had his top scholars dig up ancient texts like the Batalname, which is the sprawling epic about a fictional Arab warrior. He studied these nameless, made-up caliphs to uncover the specific behaviors that made them so beloved by the masses. And then, he just set out to perfectly mimic their legendary traits in his everyday life. He copied their homework.
Let's see how this plays out in Section 2, Epics on the Battlefield.
Because, you know, it's one thing to act pious and humble in the safety of your court, but it's a whole other thing to carry this myth onto the muddy, chaotic fields of war against foreign rulers like the Hungarians and Venetians. And this right here perfectly illustrates life imitating art. In that battle name epic I mentioned, there's a super famous scene where the fictional caliph sees a battle turning against him. But instead of panicking, he gets down from his horse to pray, and miraculously, the tide turns. Now jump forward to the real-life Battle of Varna in 1444. Murad II is fighting the Hungarians, his forces are losing badly. And what does he do? He physically gets off his horse and prays, exactly like the caliph in the storybook. And remarkably, the tide actually shifts. The Polish-Hungarian king is killed in a reckless charge, and Murad secures a massive historic victory. And guys, this wasn't just a one-off performance for the history books. When Murad took the city of Thessalonica from the Venetians, he didn't let his troops run wild. He actively kept them in check to prevent widespread looting, which perfectly matched the fictional Ghazi king's trait of ultimate justice and fairness. By actively acting out these epic poems, he presented himself as the ultimate protector of Muslims and lesser Ghazis. And just to make absolutely sure everyone knew about his heroism, he literally had his own court historians write a hype book titled The Ghazas of Sultan Murad. This meticulously crafted image was so successful, it secured massive popular support and huge amounts of crucial funding from across the broader Muslim world, including the Mamluks and the Delhi Sultanate.
Now let's shift gears to Section 3, the diplomatic web, strategic marriages.
Because right behind that myth of the simple, pious soldier, Murad was quietly executing a highly calculated, aristocratic geopolitical strategy. The Ghazi myth won the hearts of the people, for sure,
But marriages? Marriages won territories. His unions were pure political machinery. On one hand, he married Hatice Halime Hatun from the powerful Anatolian Beylik of Chandar, entirely locking down his eastern alliance. On the other hand, he married Mara Brenković, the daughter of the despot of Serbia, basically neutralizing his volatile Balkan frontier. These marriages to noble families were perfectly designed to stabilize incredibly diverse regions and strengthen his regional political control, all without having to fire a single arrow.
And if we look really closely at Mara Brankovic, it's amazing to see the sheer political pragmatism of Murad II. Because despite his fierce, uncompromising public persona as the ultimate Muslim Ghazi fighting the non-believers, he was completely practical enough to have a legal Christian wife. Mara actually never converted to Islam. In Europe, she was highly respected. They called her the Sultanina. She served as this massive diplomatic bridge between the Ottomans and Christian Europe, and later she even became the highly respected adoptive mother to Murad's son, who you might know as Mehmed the Conqueror.
Moving right along to Section 4, the cost of empire, wealth versus growth. Now I want you to contrast that humble, simple soldier public aesthetic with his booming economic reality. 2.5 million. That staggering number is the annual revenue in ducats during Murad II's reign, and we get this figure directly from a French traveler and spy named Bertrand de la Brocquière, who toured the Ottoman lands in 1432. That is a massive sum of money for the 15th century. It proves that the Ottoman state under Murad was unbelievably wealthy, because let's face it, you cannot fund constant, massive military campaigns on piety and good vibes alone. So while Murad played the part of this modest soldier who avoided royal excesses just to appeal to the common folks, his actual administrative style was fueling an absolute economic powerhouse. The sheer cost of his constant military campaigns was mind-boggling, yet it was perfectly balanced by a rapid, massive expansion of Ottoman cities and incredibly lucrative international trade networks. The myth funded the man, sure, but his brilliant administration funded the vastly expensive military campaigns that actually made the myth a reality in the first place. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the man behind the myth. We've seen the masterful propaganda, the calculated diplomacy, the incredible wealth, but we really need to peer past those biased chronicles to look at the actual human being who was pulling all these strings. If you're picturing a towering, glowing, muscular warrior ripped straight from the pages of a fantasy novel, prepare to have your expectations wonderfully subverted. Thanks to that same French traveler I mentioned, Bertrand de la Brocquière, who actually met Murad face-to-face in Adrianople, we have a crystal clear picture. Just listen to this. He is a little, short, thick man. He has a broad and brown face, high cheekbones, a round beard, a great and crooked nose, with little eyes. I mean, wow. This surprisingly blunt eyewitness account punctures that mythological aura so perfectly, doesn't it? It grounds this towering historical figure back into a relatable, flawed human reality. He wasn't some giant glowing warrior god, he was a short, thick-set guy with a crooked nose who just so happened to have an incredibly brilliant political mind. So the real takeaway from this explainer is that this is a tale of two distinct identities. You have the myth, the simple, pious, legendary warrior acting out epic poems on the muddy battlefield. And then you have the man, a phenomenally wealthy, highly strategic, politically pragmatic administrator managing complex trade networks, massive urban expansion, and deep aristocratic alliances. Murad II's greatest triumph wasn't just his victories on the battlefield. It was his absolute mastery of public relations and political myth-making that convinced an entire fractured empire to follow him. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question. If a 15th century sultan could successfully reverse engineer ancient legends to build a massive empire, how do modern leaders still use myth-making to secure our support today? I'll leave you to chew on that thought. We like to think we're totally immune to propaganda in the modern digital age, but the mechanics of building a public persona, they haven't really changed since the 1400s. Thank you so much for joining this explainer. Keep digging into those primary sources and always, always keep questioning the history you read.